This Mania weekend in Dallas, join Brian Zane and special guests Alex, Queen of the Ring, Mr. Ooh La La, and Darren Corbin for a live screening and riffing of American Angels, Baptism of Blood, part of the GCW World Fair at Fair Park. For tickets and info, visit regret.brownpapertickets.com.
Hey, let's do it for the content. Mega Ran. Let's go. Let's get it. Dick Kick City. It gets gritty when Mega Ran come through. The kid gets busy. Work yourself into a shoot, but you know it's legit. Like what you like, just don't be a dick. Hey, wrestling with regret. Let's get it. Yeah. What's that set? Maybe you should bottle it. Drink it and spray it on. Get Claude to model it. 8 years in, can't look back. Who else can make velour sweatsuits look whack? Wrestling with regret. Let's get it. Yeah.
If there's one thing that's been consistent about Vince McMahon's creative process over the years, it's that he rarely uses other people's ideas, unless he runs out of other options. It feels like ever since Vince bought WCW more than 20 years ago, there's been a never-ending stream of nostalgia, either blatant or otherwise inspired by something from the past, to try and keep fans interested or coming back to the product. But then for whatever reason, McMahon gets bored with his new toy and abandons it. Think of the NWO, or the ECW reboot, or that brief fascination with 2 out of 3 Falls matches a few years ago. But hey, what about the Cruiserweight division? It was one of the biggest factors for WCW's success in the mid-90s. It showcased an evolution of what wrestling was becoming, and with the right kind of marketing and push behind it, it could be something that, well, I guess those experiments were fun while they lasted. Now, you may not be aware of this, but in the mid-2000s, WWE Creative wanted to inject some life into their Cruiserweight division by creating what they called the Juniors division. And what originally had the makings of a great movement instead turned out to be...
That smell is the sweet smell of success, Teddy. Ratings!
These days, we often look back at the Ruthless Aggression era through rose-colored glasses. We seem to have adopted this collective opinion that things back then weren't nearly as bad as we thought they were at the time, and in fact, a lot of what they did back then has aged well. But the absurdly short-lived Juniors division does not belong in that category and was treated like an absolute joke from the word go. Was it by design or by sheer stupidity? This week, we're taking a closer look. According to Court Bauer, the current head of MLW and former head writer of SmackDown, it all began in 2005 when the show's creative team pitched a juniors division with a style similar to New Japan's in mind. The plan was to use existing roster members like Super Crazy and Psychosis, along with a slew of other international talent the writers put together as a wish list. From Ultimo Dragon to Mystico to Milano Collection AT, there were a lot of impressive names that went across Vince's desk, and amazingly, he approved the idea. I mean, it sounds wildly out of character, right? I mean, think about this. In some alternate timeline, WWE fans could be experiencing a whole new style of wrestling that wouldn't become the norm for another 10 years or so. What a forward-thinking idea by McMahon to approve this idea. And who did he have as the guy in charge of hiring this talent? That's right, John Laurinaitis, the same guy who tried to turn the company's women's division into a live-action swimsuit catalog, and who once hired the wrong one-legged wrestler, was given the nod to hire all the international junior talent he could find. Though in this case, I think he took the word junior a bit too literal.
The juniors are back, and they're climbing the walls!
And so, Johnny Ace signed a crew of Mexican mini-wrestlers, including Octagoncito, Piratita Morgan, and Super Porky. Hey, is that cannibalism? Now, in no way am I knocking the ability of the wrestlers he did sign, because they all certainly were talented. I just don't think they were the wrestlers the creative team had in mind. Okay, so they're no Mystico or Ultimo Dragon, but surely they can still be treated seriously and... Hey! No! I said, surely they could still be treated...
1, 2, 3!
Surely they can...
Welcome back, and how about this? We get the opportunity for the first time in the junior division.
Come on, man! Well, I guess I should have seen this coming. Who would have guessed that a company that has always, like always, reduced midget wrestling into a comedy act would keep it up here? Now, smaller wrestlers have always been a novelty act. 60 years ago, little people and female wrestlers were at about a level playing field, but WWE's particular brand of treatment for them is not unlike their slogan: then, now, forever. It's not too much of a shock after hearing story after story showcasing Vince's sense of humor, which some might call immature. Of course McMahon would potentially twist the idea as a rib, or that Johnny Ace could have made those hires to tickle Vince's funny bone. Whether it was due to malice or incompetence, an idea that was originally pitched with the purest of intentions had been transformed into a wacky parody. But hey, if it doesn't work out, don't worry. There's no real person of power who'll take the blame for it. No. We're gonna pass the buck on to a fictional character. Meet Palmer Cannon, perfectly normal network representative and not at all a jacked professional wrestler getting an entry into the main roster however he can. In the same way Right to Censor was the company's response to the Parents Television Council breathing down their neck in 2000, Cannon was WWE's wink and a nod to UPN putting their foot down over Muhammad Hassan. I mean, his initials were PC for crying out loud. It's more blatant than that time Dustin Rhodes spoke for the evangelists against television, movies, and entertainment, which ironically I completely missed when I saw that last. The juniors are part of Cannon's new talent initiative, which also included the Boogeyman. So yeah, that should give you an idea as to what level of seriousness this division was going to be treated. And here I thought the light heavyweights of the late 90s had it rough. After a series of backstage moments chock full of height puns and the wrestlers doing their best Ewok impressions, the juniors division finally saw its debut on the October 25th episode of SmackDown, when Short Sleeve Samson took on Pitbull Patterson, who each came out to the goofiest tracks in WWE's MP3 collection. The match included a lot of shtick involving buckets of water and confetti, and also featured Nick Patrick getting hit in the mean bean machine. Yes sir, it's the division that's changing Friday nights. Fitness guru Simon Dean came by to voice his disapproval because I guess there weren't enough silly gimmicks in the mix yet. And while all this was going on, Michael Cole and Taz would howl with laughter that was so forced you'd think Vince himself was holding them at gunpoint in the booth. Don't get me wrong, when the wrestlers were allowed to actually wrestle, it was fine. But every moment of these segments did their best to pound into your head that your goal in all this was to laugh, damn it. Oh yeah, and blame Palmer Cannon.
Let me get this straight. You got nothing better to do except run around the world and try and find truth. Is there like a little island somewhere? You guys keep these guys like in a cage or something?
Vince must have gotten all the yucks out of his system after that maiden voyage, because the whole division was immediately de-emphasized after a few weeks of hype. SmackDown made no mention of the juniors until 2 weeks later, when Piero Hito beat Todd Stone with nary a drop of water or piece of confetti. My guess is they were already in the self-fulfilling prophecy phase of the experiment, convincing themselves it was a failure, despite doing nothing but presenting these guys in the most dated, one-dimensional, and marginalized manner possible. Clearly no one at UPN with any clout actually watched the show, because the balls of this company to create a character based on the home network for Taz to make fun of are perhaps the only things here that aren't mini. Then again, maybe UPN was watching, because the division was abandoned for nearly 3 months until it was randomly brought back on the February 10th, 2006 edition of SmackDown. This tag team match featuring Octagoncito and Pequeño Violencia versus Suki and Mascarita Sagrada ended in a no contest when the debuting Fit Finlay came to the ring and beat the crap out of everyone. Symbolism! Now it's worth noting, Pequeño Violencia was actually 5'2", a whole 2 inches taller than the established height limit for the division. But who's counting? After that humiliation, the juniors are relegated to Velocity for the remainder of the division's existence. The wrestlers' contracts apparently prevented them from working in Mexico during this time, despite guys like Super Porky only ever appearing in backstage skits and never wrestling an actual match in WWE. Only a couple more weeks passed, if that. Then by the end of the month, the juniors division was quietly retired and all the minis released. Meanwhile, Palmer Cannon quit the company the following April, citing harassment from guys like Chris Benoit and John Bradshaw Layfield. And the only thing of value that was lost in that was The Miz's original debut feud. The message we always hear from former WWE higher-ups when it comes to these doomed-from-the-start gimmicks is basically, well, Vince McMahon would never put something on the air if he knew it was gonna suck. Oh yeah? Well, how else can you explain this? I've gone on the record here to profess my love of comedy in wrestling, but not comedy done at the expense of an entire classification of people, and not literal clown shit. Johnny Ace denied being at fault for recruiting the minis, asserting that it's what he thought the writing team had asked for. And after his track record over the years, it is impossible to definitively state whether or not Ace actually did hire those minis for a laugh, because the odds are just as good he done goofed. Instead of a genuine attempt to bring something new, fresh, and sure, even funny to television, the juniors division was little more than a ham-handed rejection of the writing team's earnest attempt at improving the in-ring product. And it was born in kayfabe from a fickle, thinly veiled joke at the expense of a television partner who dared to come down on them for airing the Muhammad Hassan segment on the same day as the London bombings. At least they weren't working with the PTC when Right to Censor was around. And I haven't even begun to address how this made the actual cruiserweights look in this company. How are we supposed to feel about the full-bodied but still smaller stars who were still actively working a cruiserweight style? Were we only supposed to laugh at them a little bit? Maybe they could have put the juniors on Raw so as not to confuse the market. So yes, obviously the juniors division was a complete and total failure and a damning indictment of Vince McMahon's brand of humor. But in the end, it may have helped shape the path of one of WWE's most popular stars. A mere 3 months after the end of the division came the arrival of the one and only Mini to stay signed by WWE for 10 whole years, Hornswoggle. As any fan from the mid-2000s and the 2010s can attest to, Swoggle was booked about as perfectly as you could expect by WWE standards. He was still portrayed as a literal child, but at least the character got to grow organically instead of being hyped up as some great new thing and flopping. He still got to be in a lot of pivotal moments, which is a lot more than can be said for the Mexican Minis that came up in 2005. Maybe when Finlay beat up all those other juniors back in February, he was doing it to make sure that no one else could overshadow his son. In the end, the WWE Juniors division only served as a minor example of the creative issues that keep wreaking havoc to this day. Instead of serving the fans, the product seemingly exists only to appease the ever-shifting whims and impulses of Vince McMahon. And with that, I guess this video is done. Boy, got here early. It's kind of odd for me to make a video like this that ends up being so short. Oh, shit!